YouTube! Today's episode is about the most essential medical phrasal verbs you need to know. Now, there's nothing that I want more in this world than for you, my beloved viewers, to be healthy and safe. But we all, regrettably, at some point or another, fall ill and may need to communicate this to a health professional or moan about it to a family member.
I'm sick.
Plus, with COVID lurking about, it's important to be up to speed with medical lingo. So let's get into it. We're first going to learn about how to express feeling different symptoms. So imagine that you're at work and all of a sudden you feel your body temperature rising and you feel like you're getting sick. You could say to your boss or colleague that you feel that you're coming down with something, like the flu.
Man, I feel like I'm coming down with something.
You could simply say, "Oh gosh, Rob, I feel like I'm coming down with something," or "I feel like I'm coming down with the flu." But if you want to say that you caught an illness, you could use the phrase "to pick something up." And the same way you could pick up a bag of potato chips from the store, you could also pick up a disease. As an example, let's say that you came back from abroad and you fell ill a few days later. It could be that you've picked up something at the airport and that something is an illness. Alternatively, you could use the phrasal verb to burn up to describe your fever.
You're burning up.
And you could say, "I think that I'm burning up. I'm going to go to the doctor." In addition to having a fever, you could also feel nauseous. And that's a fancy way of saying that you want to vomit. It's also a terrible word to spell. Instead, you could use the term "to throw up." So if the doctor asks you what other symptoms you have apart from a fever, you could say, "I was throwing up all night." In another scenario, a person could, for example, fall and hit their arm and it could start to swell, meaning that it becomes inflated and much larger than it normally is. The phrase here is to swell up. For example, Jack was playing football and we think he broke his arm because it swelled up. Similarly, we have the phrase to puff up, and it essentially means the same thing as swell up. And I remember this one time that a bee stung a friend of mine and his arm puffed up where the bee had stung his arm. But don't confuse the phrasal words to puff up and to swell up with flare up. A flare-up is a sudden outburst of something, and it's not only used in the context of health, but if a disease or a symptom flares up, it means that it suddenly comes back.
She had a flare-up of an existing injury.
So by way of example, let's say that you injured your wrist a couple of years ago, but suddenly the pain flares up and you can barely use your hand. If you've ever experienced a bad cold, you may have coughed up a bit of phlegm. That's the gooey stuff that builds up in your throat. Excuse me. To cough up means to bring up phlegm, or in some instances, blood, by coughing. And your doctor could say to you, "Have you been coughing up phlegm?"
It looks a lot like dried phlegm.
So another symptom a person could experience is lightheadedness, as if you're about to faint. But rather than saying, "I feel like fainting," you could use the phrasal verb to pass out. And to pass out just means that a person loses consciousness, like that time when you were way too drunk and you passed out. In a sentence, you could say, "It was so hot outside that I almost passed out," or "I thought I was going to pass out." And if a person passes out, but then regains consciousness and wakes up, they are said to come round. The expression "to come round" can also be used after somebody wakes up after having had surgery and the anesthetic wears off. For example, it took the patient quite a while to come round after she had her surgery. It means that it took quite a bit of time for the patient to wake up. So now, as you can see, we are slowly transitioning into remedies that will help a person fight off an illness. In the medical context, to fight off means to defend against an infection or a disease.
To fight off rabies.
Let's imagine that you're at the doctor's office and they prescribe you some medicine. That doctor might tell you that medicine ABC will help your body fight off the virus. But in some cases, you might not even need to be prescribed any medicine because the illness might just let up on its own. If a disease lets up, it means that it diminishes or just goes away. For example, you could say that most colds let up after a few days. Or if the illness is not that serious, a doctor could say to you that you'll get rid of it in no time and that you'll shake it off. In addition to being a very catchy Taylor Swift song, to shake it off is another way of saying that you'll feel better and get rid of an illness. So let's imagine that you're traveling to Spain next week to go on holiday, but you catch the flu. You could say, I hope I shake off this flu before I go on holiday next week. Another way to say that a medical condition gets better is to use the term to clear up. Again, if you ever go to the doctor's office and you tell them that you had a cough for the past week, they could say, it's nothing to worry about. Your cough should clear up after a few days. But if the illness persists and it doesn't clear up, then the doctor may prescribe you medicine. In other words, you might have to dose up with a certain drug.
Better not take a full dose.
And the term to dose up simply means to give someone or to give yourself a certain amount of medicine. As an example, let's say that you feel as if you're coming down with something, and as a precaution, you dose up on vitamin D3 and vitamin B12. You therefore administer and you dose up on those vitamins. However, if a person suffers from a serious disease or injury, they could be said to pull through.
He's gonna pull through.
You would have heard this term in loads of medical TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, and to pull through means to recover, to get better, especially after a life-threatening disease, condition, or illness. For instance, the doctor said that John will pull through after he had undergone a serious surgery. And if you ever, and hopefully never, find yourself in the emergency room because you, cut your foot on broken glass, the doctor or nurse might patch you up before giving you stitches. And to patch someone up basically means to give someone medical care temporarily. So if someone cuts themselves on glass, you'd probably want to quickly clean the wound and stop it from bleeding by compressing it with a bandage. And then at the hospital, the medical professionals will either stitch the wound or give it whatever proper care it may need. And that's all I have for you today. Stay safe and healthy, and remember to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to never ever miss another English lesson.